So I'm here with Michael Chrisment of FarmerConnect, and we're going to talk about your recent funding round that you've done and an introduction to the business and where you started from, the challenges that you've had, the problems that you're solving, and what the technology is doing for both coffee and cocoa farmers. Welcome, Michael. How are you?
I'm really good. Thank you for the invitation. Sounds interesting and like a very kind of meaty list of topics to discuss. So
I always get very ambitious with my topics. I don't know if we'll manage to cover them all, but
let's kick it off. We'll go through everything.
Fantastic. I see you've got some coffees behind you. Can I just ask, as off topic, are those coffee bags of particular significance?
They're all traceable.
Ah,
starting with orangutan coffee. This is coffee from UCC.
I know them. Yeah.
And you can.
There's your OMR code on the back. Yeah.
FarmerConnect. So if you scan it, so I'll put it like that, so people even.
You can scan it with your phone. Fantastic.
And then if you scan it, you land on a web page that gives you the entire journey of that coffee all the way from Indonesia to in that instance the UK, because that was sold in and it's still sold in Waitrose and Ocado in the UK. So they are of significance. All those coffees are traceable coffee.
Ah, fantastic. Well, I'm glad I asked. So why don't you give a short introduction, Michael, to yourself and to FarmerConnect? Tell us a little bit about who you are.
So FarmerConnect, I think I've said it all.
Yeah, we kind of did that. You're right.
It's a product demo, but I can probably say a few words on it a little bit more. Myself, I'm the CEO of FarmerConnect. I've been with FarmerConnect for 9 months. So it feels like baby time, 9 months, and then you give birth to in that instance, a Series A funding. So, I was saying to the team, it looks like, 9 months of looking at yourself and then now opening to the world and opening up for growth. So it's exactly the same metaphor I had with my 2 kids. So I'm really excited to have joined FarmerConnect. I've got 20 years background of work, mostly 10 years and more in the marketing, media, comms sphere in the US, UK, France. In well-known creative agencies, where I developed a passion for brands in particular and business. And then the other side of it was food. And I craft foods, also known as Mondelez International, and Nestle. And Nestle was closer to coffee even because it was the global head of integrated marketing for the Nestle group on their beverage brands, and namely Nescafe, which is the biggest brand of Nestle. So I really developed that passion for tech, comms, and food. And now at FarmerConnect, I'm just doing those 2, but on top, I've got a higher purpose of making a difference in smallholder farmers' lives. So because this is a liaison, let's say, to what FarmerConnect stands for, because we aim at humanizing consumption through technology. That's what we aim at. And to do that, we provide software, we provide technology to go down that path and to equip the entire supply chain with the technology solution that enables more humanization of consumption through various technology, various tools, various products we would probably talk about later on.
So just to be clear, what is the problem? I mean, every business starts for a reason. What was the problem that you were trying to solve when, and I say you, because I know you've been there for 9 months, but the mission of the business, what was the problem they were trying to solve?
I think there was an observation that, if you look back in the past 20 years, the consumption of coffee, because we started with coffee, we're a spin-off from a green coffee merchant called Sukifina, who's a well-known coffee merchant.
I know them very well.
Here. And there was an observation that the consumption and the demand is exploding and has exploded in the past 20 years. And if you look towards 2050, the projection is multiplied by 3 in terms of demand. So there's an increasing demand. But in the meantime, the price or the revenue that is given back to smallholder farmers is if not stable, somehow decreasing. So if you, just as a business, if you're picturing yourself in 2050 with 3 times the demand, and then no incentive for supply, because I mean, if you have kids and you're growing coffee, I mean, are you going to tell them to continue your business while revenue is not growing or decreasing versus the demand exploding?
This is a big problem, both in coffee and cocoa. Young people are leaving the industry, right?
Exactly. So that was the observation, um, and Dave Behrens, our founder, thought that he could contribute to solving that with creating a technology solution, first as human nature for him and for Sukafina, but they very quickly realized that if they were doing this, if they would do that only for them, they wouldn't solve the problem. So they decided to create a company outside of Sukafina, and to grow it, to bring partners in, and to expand it with other players and create a real business out of it, which they seeded themselves at the beginning, and then with growing demand, with my arrival, with additional people on the team, with additional investors and partners, decided to open up even further with independent management, with additional shareholding and investors. So that was the problem and the solution, and which we're trying to contribute to and hopefully solve, or at least improve.
And it was interesting that I remember, actually, I think we wrote a story some time back when FarmerConnect launched, and we wrote a story, and then I have to be honest, I didn't think too much else. I didn't see too much else about FarmerConnect for a while, and when I went back and looked at what you were doing recently, you've also moved into cocoa. And in fact, you were at Chocoa. I was at Chocoa as well. I was moderating on a couple of the panels there. And I was like, oh, okay, these guys are extending into cocoa. Now, it's not the first coffee company that is doing that, because there's a lot of parallels. But perhaps you could tell us a little bit about the thinking behind why you wanted to extend into the cocoa industry as well.
Yes. Let me start with the media first, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Do you want the media first?
Yes, go for it.
Okay. So here you go with the first Easter chocolate that is traceable thanks to blockchain.
Oh, that's impressive. I don't know what's more impressive, the fact that you've got this chocolate that is the first one traceable with blockchain, or the fact that you haven't eaten it yet. Because if that was on my desk,
got many. That's the answer. That's the answer. Yeah, that chocolate is coming from Madagascar. And it's a partnership we have with a company called Treegather, which is a Swiss startup that does partnerships with cocoa growers. So basically, you can yourself partner a tree, and you get 12 chocolate bar with the cocoa beans of that tree you've sponsored, and you get 6 bars every 6 months, all the way from that tree, the farmer you contributed to support.
That's really nice.
And that Easter egg is actually the first traceable Easter egg through thanks to blockchain. So yes, we're active in cocoa. This was just an example, but it tells a lot about what we can do in terms of changing lives of smallholder farmers, because that company together is paying in between 30 to 40% more their farmers than the average industry rate, because of the fact that it's traceable, it's transparent, where it's coming from, it's very good value also, and very, very good quality, because it's fresh cocoa, only 3 to 4 weeks old, versus what you have in retail, which is towards the 2 to 3 months. So yeah, very excited to be on cocoa. I think it's one of the reasons we went to cocoa is, first of all, it's food. Second, it's smallholder farmers. And there's a lot of processing similarities, even though there's a big part which is quite different. I mean, you call it blending in coffee, and then you go to a superior degree, I would say, with mass balance in cocoa. So that adds a bit of complexity, but the issues are the same. The potential benefits and gains are the same. You just need to, to change a few things in terms of processing, in terms of data standard, data structure, about the value chain and the key players. But there's a lot of similarities, and we see people approaching us also on other commodities with similarities, be it spices, be it tea, be it fragrance. So you can see there are sort of a long tail of things that FarmerConnect could go and develop towards. But to me, and I'm coming from a farmer peasant family, so I like to do things correctly. So I don't want to go too fast, and burn the steps. So it's already a lot to be done on coffee, a lot to be done on cocoa, but it's true that there's a lot of potential. And
well, I mean, those industries alone are massive, and the problems they face are huge. Do you think that the ESG laws coming in particular Europe, even the UK, are now starting to be more from an enforcement point of view, we obviously don't know yet, but they're starting to get a lot more prescriptive with their requirements over being able to evidence your supply chain and traceability. Do you think that that's driving some of the demand for your services?
of course, I think it's more than a project and the will. It's borderline low now. So we have to make that happen, and the people within those industries have to change a few things, and they need support. So obviously, this is driving a lot of interest for what we do. We had a very concrete example. I'm calling from Switzerland, so FarmerConnect is based out of Switzerland. In Switzerland, we have what we call the public votation. So I don't know if you're familiar with the concept, but every single Sunday, people go vote for something as important as a roundabout or the kind of public health 5 years plan.
Wow,
Right?
that's like the old ancient form of Greek democracy.
Exactly. So everyone get together. But just to say, a couple of months ago, there were a votation on the responsibility of multinationals, and for leaving out the details. But in Switzerland, you need to have majority, but you also need to have majority within all the cantons for something to pass on. So they had the majority of the people voting, so the majority of the people, of the inhabitants, but it didn't get all the cantons. So technically, in the public space, people they want and they voted for companies to improve, right? With it, without law, without anything, they just want it, and that's a big change. And if you compare to some of the data from a couple of years back, and I think COVID has been a huge acceleration of that, because we suffered, but we also had time to reflect on ourselves, reflect on our relationship, and reflect on our consumption also. And we're making now sort of educated guesses, educated choices. We're being a little bit more selective about the choice and the things that we buy. And we've seen an acceleration towards that. And you see it in the stat that now, people, 2/3 of the consumers would actually pay a premium for something that respects their values, that have a positive impact. I'm talking 2/3. And out of that, there's always people that are driving by price, and that used to be a majority of the consumers, and now it's really 50-50. So 50 people are driven, it's actually 40% are driven by price promotion, and another 40% now, which is sizable, is driven by what the company does, its impact, its responsibility, and all those aspects of social impacts. So that's becoming, something very, very massive. And as brands and businesses, most of the time I've been there myself, are not too much of pioneering. They're listening to the consumers, and once they have a proof that the consumer wants something, then they act.
Right.
Now they have the push, exactly as you said, of the regulators plus the consumers. So it gives a lot of reasons to move forward. Plus, on top, technology is bringing some additional benefits to them. I mean,
Let's talk about that technology for a second, because that's at the heart of what you do. Now, there's three parts, as I understand it, to the system. And the first part is the Farmer ID. Then you've got the middleware, which is the blockchain bit, and then you've got the FarmerConnect, which is the bit that we see at the other end.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna leave off the blockchain bit in the middle, because that's probably a technical discussion which people may or may not be interested in. But I would like to talk about the sort of the sandwich, as it were, the top and the bottom part of the sandwich. So the Farmer ID, maybe that's something you could give a little bit of an introduction as to what that is, and the use case and the demographic who uses it.
For sure. So the talk of the town these days is really the first mile. There's a lot of things that people want to track, report on, get the real data on, fix, because there's sizable and meaningful issues on the first mile. So that area is something where we need to focus. So we've decided to create a product that is dedicated to that area, to the first mile, and to the farmers, the community of farmers, the community of farms. And it's called Farmer ID. It's a wallet. Basically, it's a digital wallet. Like you and I, we buy a wallet, it's empty, then we stick our loyalty cards or our credit cards, some bills, some coins, photo of our kids, a shopping list, I mean, you name it, stamps, whatever. So it's exactly the same idea, is to have an app. And when I say an app, it can take different forms, and I'll elaborate on that. And then feed it with information, yourself as a farmer. You feed it with different data points. So that could be who you are, first name, last name, where do you live, how long you've been doing this, whether you're in the family, how many pickers do you have, what sort of volumes do you have, what sort of agricultural practices you're having, all sorts of data points. You feed that in. Then you select whether or not you want this to be shared and with whom. You remain the owner of the data. That's very important. So the farmer remains the owner of the data and the one that decides where that information is going to go. And then once that information is entered, you can add transactional information. So, the coffee you've paid, to whom and when, at what price and what volume and what quality, with what certification. That information will need to be validated. So there's no single point of truth. The buyer will validate the information you enter, or the buyer will enter the information and you as a farmer will validate the information entered by the buyer. That's what Farmer ID does. Obviously, there are many scenarios which we worked on, because sometimes you don't have a smartphone, you have a flip phone, or you don't even have a phone. Sometimes you have connectivity, sometimes you don't have connectivity, you have low connectivity, and sometimes you don't even have literacy, right? So all those aspects, all those scenarios are being worked out and continue being worked out through the different projects we have across the world, depending on the maturity of the people, of the market, of the community. People can do that by themselves. They can do that in groups, association of farmers. We also have a guardianship format where someone can take care of that for the farmers, or do it offline, and then when they move into an area of community, data gets uploaded, and that's why we have different ways and different shapes and form of making that happen. That's really Farmer ID.
And so with that data, I understand as well, the farmer the benefit to them of having that data is that they can then use that to obtain financing, basically to evidence their transactions, what they've done, so that they can get access to finance. Could you tell us a little bit about that side of it?
It's one of the benefits for sure. So there are very tangible benefits. So finance is one, credit, all the financial services that are linked to that. If you lower the interest rate, that's going to be really good for the farmers. We're talking about microfinance there, so it really makes a difference to them. $50 for someone is something that can help ensure an entire crop. So, we're talking about something that is really meaningful to them. There are other benefits to that. Once you enter connectivity, digitalization, community, you can start sharing, you can start receiving information, sending information. So there's a lot of knowledge sharing around that. And there's also, I would say, the human aspect of things. So if I'm again talking about chocolate, so that example which I showed you, I'll show you now a tablet of chocolate from Together. This one is coming from Côte d'Ivoire, which I think the real example is coming from Together from Madagascar. Was actually Fabien, the founder of Together, came to see the farmer, and with a piece of chocolate, he had never tasted chocolate in his life. Right, been doing cocoa beans for 20 years, never tasted chocolate in his life.
This is, I don't want to interrupt you, but this is, people don't realize that.
They don't
realize that. Last Christmas, and this is my own little punt, I get to do one little thing for my own business. But last Christmas, we donated 200 bars of chocolate in Liberia, which were made in Liberia from a chocolate company, a specialist chocolate company. And we worked with Solidaridad and the charity Videmco, and they distributed this chocolate to the cocoa farmers, none of which, they've worked their whole lives, none of which ever knew what it was they were farming the cocoa for. Yeah. And it was a very satisfying thing to do.
Yeah, no. And in the same idea, making now through technology, making that connection in either in that direction, which is from the farmer to the consumer, or from the consumer to the farmer, I find it fascinating, because people that creates the produce get to see where their produce is going and what sort of impact it has on people's life, and did they like them, and what they do with it, and that's one thing. On the reverse, they can also get the consumer and get the people like you and I to kind of feedback on what they've done, or to even, this is what we do with the other product, which I'm going to talk about now, the Thank My Farmer app, is send back even a like or a little heart to them, and or beyond a message, or even beyond tipping them for supporting some of this sustainability project at the origin. So
I must confess, Michael, I have not used FarmerConnect, and so I haven't used Thank My Farmer. But something I can say is that in Africa in particular, but also in South America as well. But in Africa, I've noticed if you send someone a message and say, I liked something, the guys get excited. They notice. It's kind of not like, we get a bit desensitized to it, I think, over in the West. Over there, I guarantee you, every time I send out my newsletter each week, I get back a lot of thank yous from people in Africa. Thank you so much, Nick, for your newsletter. I'm not saying I don't ever get anything from the West, but generally speaking, in the African communities, they really engage with social media. They love the fact that there's a connection to the rest of the world, and that people and that people are engaging with them in some way. So I think it'll be very positive, right?
I think historically they've been left out of the process, if we're totally honest. And we take the produce, and then we are not transforming the produce in the country. This is moving, and then you don't know what's happening, and a lot of things are happening. So I think to kind of shorten the distance, this is what we can do. It doesn't mean that we're gonna remove the middlemen and the players, because everyone within the industry needs to need to sustain their business. But if we can lower the distance through communication, thanks to technology, I think we'll send additional incentives, which are not the only one, because we're talking about people that are living with a few dollars per month. We can contribute to that humanization, to that improvement of life. So that's Farmer ID. So in between, you've talked about it. There's a platform which is called Connect Hub, which is built on a layer of technology from IBM. Two words on that, without going into the details. But why did we do that? Because for us it's a huge investment. A startup. I'm not going to tell you the share of cost that this is taking, but this is sizable. We did this for a very important reason, and we wanted to and we want to have an impact, right? So we want scale. We want people to be able to move away from pilots and proof of concept into having an impact on volume, and to really embark volume on the platform. So that's why we did that partnership, in being able to scale, in being able to work with big players within the industry to have a real impact. So that was the decision that was made. Really, the effort and the IP of FarmerConnect is on top of that technology layer, for the service, for the interface, for the UI, for the UX. I'm a marketing and comms person. I've built tools in my life that never get used. I've done this so many times. And I know it's not difficult to build a tool. What's difficult is for people to use it, to come back to it, to advocate about it, to give you insights about how to improve it. This is the real difficulty, usage. Right. Everyone can build an app on the App Store. Getting people to download it, to use it, not only once, but come back to it regularly. This is the real difficulty. So we really wanted to invest on the solution layer, so that we provide solutions to problems, so that people really use the platform, and with the volume growing, then we make an impact. So that's for the middle part. But I know you didn't want to spend too much time.
No, that was perfect. That was perfect. I just want to get bogged down in the latest blockchain technology, because I know it would be my fault. I'll go off on one. So.
And I'm not a good person to talk about that anyway. So I'll probably have Fabian and my CTO to elaborate on that. And the last product then is what is useful then on this pack, when you see the QR code, is you take your phone, you as usual, as we've been doing in the last year of like falling in love with QR codes on everything, whether it's COVID, the menu at bars, or when restaurants were open, and then you flash it, and then you see the exact same product on the web page.
So cool.
And then as a consumer, you flip through it, and then you see a map, and on that map you can see all the different steps of that very product, with the details, where it was collected, where the warehouse, the import, the export. And then you can even participate, and I'm sorry, this is in French, but I'm a proud French snobbish Parisian, so I have my iPhone in I have my iPhone in French. But then you can support some local projects. So on this one, you see back in Indonesia, you can thank the farmer, you can support the Sumatra and Oregon Conservative Program, thanks to the guys that have donated money already. And there's also a capacity building program that you can support directly from your phone, donating, a couple of dollars, euro, pounds, whatever, to the sustainability program. So that's what Thank My Farmer does. It's not an app; it's a web app. You don't have to download. You don't have to register. You don't have to share your entire history of data like the GAFAs would do.
Got it. Can I just ask, when you make a donation, how much of that goes to if I'm donating to the farmer, how much of it goes to the farmer?
So we're only taking the fee that the financial transfer costs.
Right, the transaction fee. So you're basically 100% of what lands in the bank at the destination goes to the farmer.
Exactly. And we're tracing this. We're also using blockchain to trace this and to report back to the consumer that the money has been donated and given at the time and to the person. So
because I know this was one of the problems always with, and I know years and years and years ago, my wife and I did some charity work and for an orphanage in Bucharest, and we chose that because we could go there. The biggest problem that we had was, and we looked at orphans in China and other places. The problem was that you could never be sure the money was going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you pass it through various organizations, there was always quite a heavy administration fee.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes it would go to some middleman. It would actually never get to where you wanted to send it. And frankly, it was, it was a very disappointing and frustrating exercise, disillusioning exercise to go through, to realize that you want to help somebody on the other side of the world, but sending money isn't good enough. And so the ability to actually validate that if I'm sending money to a coffee farmer in Sumatra, that coffee farmer says, I got it, and there's no middleman that can take his fee out, and along the middle, that's actually quite powerful, I think.
Yeah, and I think, the only thing working with, the other thing that is beneficial, I think, with working with brands is that we have a lot of brands that are supporting and manufacturing those products that are saying, well, we have a target for that project. If we're not reaching that target, we'll complement, or we'll donate the equivalent amount of money that the consumers have given. We'll just match that.
We'll match it. That's nice. Match funding.
Exactly. So I think there's something beneficial in that, also embarking the brands on that project, because it's beneficial to them. They get to see, in all transparency, they don't get the consumer data, but they get to see what's resonating with consumers. And I think this is not a bad idea to share with brands what resonates with consumers, what sorts of projects resonate more with them. Yesterday I was talking with Fabien again, the founder of Together, and he told me that we're supporting them on 4 origins, and they have 4 farmers, 2 women, 2 men. The women currently are getting 70% of the donation. I'm no one to say whether this is good or bad or whatever, but that's an insight. That's an insight that women-led farming organizations are getting more support from the consumers as we speak, for the reasons of whatever. But that's an insight. Where is this coming from? Is there an origin that is more supported than others? Type of projects, levels of support. That's all valuable insight, and I think that helps the brand's CSR strategy. And that helps everyone who's trying to drive the agenda within these organizations to say, this is not only a corporate thing, this is also supporting our business. Because if someone buys a product, flash a QR code, spend an average, which is the case for us, about 2 to 2.5 minutes on a page, is like 10 times the average time spent on a web page on a brand. More than 10 times. That means a lot. That means that those activities and that strategic direction is also building some short-term, medium-term, long-term gains for those businesses, building their businesses, building their brands. So if we can demonstrate that, I think everyone within sustainability will get further support in bringing that up on the agenda, not only to just answer the regulators' laws, but to go a step further and to be leaders and to advance the agenda a little bit more than what's imposed by the regulators. So it's an incentive. I'm a big advocate of the fact that where we want to have impact, but we're a business for profit, that will have an impact. And everyone within the industry needs to find an incentive at every single point to move the agenda. If you're only focusing on a certain part of the supply chain, you will not succeed in a transformation. You will make changes here and there, but you will not embark everyone towards something more impactful, meaningful, transformational.
I actually do agree with you. I think people make a mistake a lot of the time by thinking that companies should do the right thing. That's a naive position, in my opinion, because if your only reason is to say, well, we want to be driven to do the right thing, it leaves out so many people in the equation, and you actually just won't get anywhere. However, a more productive and an effective strategy is to say, let's align the right thing with your own interests. So if a company will do something that's in its own interests, so as we see, and as you mentioned earlier, now that there's such a large public awareness and clear voice for ESG to be part of a company's DNA, that means that there's a brand reputation at stake. That means it's in the company's interests to do the right thing. So all of these things need to definitely come together. What I'm interested in is it sounds as though you're generating quite a lot of probably quite unique data. Is that data and what are you going to do with that data? Are you going to share it with partners? Are you going to make any public reports available at some stage? What are your plans?
So, I mean, FarmerConnect as a business don't have access to the data. I mean, the data is the ownership is in the ownership of the people that are providing the data. So, like I said, for the farmer, like I said, for every single partner. This is one of the key reasons we're using blockchain. It's allowing a permissioned access of upload, usage, sharing, retrieval of the data. So we are not accessing the data directly. Nevertheless, we are very much involved in the early stage of making sure the data is workable. And I think we probably can discuss about that, because structuring the data, standardizing the data, making sure the data is of quality is very, very important. And also picking the right and useful data points.
Yeah.
I've been in companies where we're talking about data lakes, data oceans, data, whatever. I mean, I think, too much information is like analysis paralysis, there's too much. That's why within FarmerConnect, we have a lot of people that are actually coming from and within the industry that knows the business and can advise our clients on the right and useful data points we need to track. We don't need to track the entire stuff. There are other systems for that. There are bespoke, in-house, very deep ERP system which we connect to and take the 3-4 data points that are useful for what we need to do as a collective to make a difference and to have action out of the data we collect. So that look into how do we structure, how do we govern the data, who's got access, what are the key data points is really, really, really important and the key. Then what is it that we do with the data? Well, we don't access the data. We leave our clients to action on the data. The only part where we do have access to anonymized data is on Thank My Farmer with consumer behaviors. And we leverage different means, including Google Analytics. It's all GDPR compliance, and we issue reports related to insights and trends and behaviors of consumers on the web platform. For the rest, it's our clients leveraging the data they have access to.
I think that's, I mean, you don't know this about me, but I'm also a privacy nut. I am a very strong privacy advocate. And so the principle of minimization in GDPR is the first step in making sure that you're respecting people's privacy, which is fantastic. But there will be a lot of data, which you just mentioned, for example, the anonymous data of behavior. You don't have to know that it's Nick that did this. You just have to know that, oh, it's interesting. A lot of people are interested in this subject area. This is somewhere we should spend more attention, and that'll be very useful. Even what the take up is and how many people are scanning the QR codes. And you mentioned the amount of time spent on the page, which is a good indication of engagement.
Yeah.
All that stuff is very useful and goes some way to helping convince people on the board that they should pay attention, because this is important to consumers, and this is the zeitgeist of consumer buying patterns right now.
Yeah.
So,
and again, if you want to go a step further, if Thank My Farmer, towards down the page, sometimes there are brands that are willing to add a button that says discover more of that product or order more. Then they click on that, they get redirected to the brand ecosystem. They can then get into that, buy stuff online, or register into a CRM program, a newsletter, some sort of brand owned programs. Then it's fine. They're getting qualified leads, and they're managing that part. We are not gathering consumer data.
Yeah, and that's very good. I feel like we're really nerding out here on some great and interesting topics. I've also taken up almost an hour of your time. So I've got two more questions I want to try and fire out and get in there before we wrap it up. The first, I guess, is as a business. You've mentioned earlier on you've hinted towards some of the difficulties starting up. It's expensive. Tell us a little bit about the challenges that maybe you had as a business, where you are right now, and what challenges you think are still need to be overcome.
I think we've been incredibly lucky, and I shouldn't say that like that, but I'm just going to say it as it is, with COVID. So, I mean, if you look at the world, this is a complete disaster. But for us at the business, it has allowed us to focus, because there were less distraction, there were less traveling and fair and conferences and people interviewing you.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm rude. But it was less distraction, so we had an occasion to focus on the product, and really to develop a robust set of products. Now we have 3 very solid products. So there was a risk of, like, when you're a startup and trying to go too fast into growth, commercialization, selling the dream. When you're a startup, what you have is a PowerPoint, right? You're on PowerPoint.
Guy Kawasaki, selling the dream.
PowerPoint, and then someone buys in, but then you need to deliver. Then you have not so happy clients. We were so lucky to advance products. Products are now minimum viable product. They're running with clients, with businesses in different geos, in different origin country, in different consumer country, in different industries. So we were so lucky to accelerate that and to really deliver soluble products. And I think that was a risk. Then the other challenge for us is that we were born on 2 foundations. I don't know if it's going to be dreams at the end when we replay the story, but the number one was to say we want to be end to end. So imagine those guys, all the way from consumers to farmers, on an industry that is $400 billion end to end, like 3 people end to end. That's like. But anyway, we felt we had to do this in order to be successful. That's tough. The second one, even more difficult, we felt like we have to be collaborative. We have to be open and inclusive. We need to get everyone working together. So today I'm going to go to, JDE and Nestle and say, why don't you work together? And they're going to look at me like, sure, thank you very much. Well, today we've demonstrated that this is possible. We've got Sukafina, Itochu, 2 traders working together. I can give you other examples of roasters working together, cooperatives working together. Just because we know our business, we create the right firewalls, and we have this ambition of, by being collaborative, we can be transformational. But this is a real challenge. Every day you're not like an IT company developing a software for one company, sort of a one-to-one. every day you have in front of you for one project 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 different partners along the value chain that you need to align and just make sure everyone's happy with the way the project is working. But once you realize this, you win, you make a difference. And then I'll stop, but I give you a concrete example, which is we've entered partnership with Cochupe, which is the largest coffee cooperative in the world in Brazil. 60 million bags of coffee per year. That's a sizable amount of produce. Sucafina is buying traceable coffee from Cochupe that comes from farmers who are using and the cooperative and Sucafina using our products. This is sold to Sucafina with a premium. Sucafina is giving back 50% of that premium to the farmer, 50% of the other 50% of that premium to local sustainability projects. So all of a sudden, you get different people working together. You charge a premium. That premium gets redistributed at the origin. For the moment, this is, well, I shouldn't say for the moment. It's a concrete example of making a difference for real at the origin. Also for the cooperative because they get benefits through the project that they support. Also for the trader because it's traceable coffee, so that has value for them towards their clients. So everyone wins, and that's what we're trying to do. But it's a daily challenge to make that happen. But we feel it's the only way.
Fantastic. I have one more question. I got 2 minutes, so it's really about your future and what your plans are. But specifically, you mentioned you've got this, I think it was $9 million funding round, Series A. Is there going to be a Series B? Is there going to be an exit? Is this a VC? I think you mentioned it was a trader investor. It's a strategic investment. Tell us a little bit about because the finance basically will steer the direction of the company, the source of finance and the expectations that go along with that. So tell us a little bit about 3 years down the road, where you see the business. Are you planning a trade sale? Is it going to be floated on the stock market? Tell us a little bit about where you see yourself in 3 to 5 years.
So first point, FarmerConnect was born out of industry needs. So both seeded by the industry and with people and knowledge of the industry. This continues. So in Series A, it's only players from the industry, no VC, no banks. Okay, so people have investing in FarmerConnect and are the prime users and paying clients of FarmerConnect. That gives a lot, that tells a lot about the willingness from those players from the industry to evolve and to gather benefits out of that. And that's not only Europe and Switzerland, that's now Americas and Asia, with investors in Europe, in Americas, in Asia, across the industry. That story continues. I don't think it will be driven by finance. I think it will be driven by impact. And it will be, of course, some financial impact, but also some real social impact. And I think will be measured by two. Whether there will be a Series B, I hope, not because we're running out of cash, but because we're confirmed into being the solution and that we need additional means to further accelerate and go even faster. Because, and that would be my final note, it's a race, it's like operating systems, you need to have a fair share of the market. And I'm fully transparent about that. We're a technology, we're a software company. We need to get as many players as we can onto the platform to demonstrate the greater benefits, not only for yourself, but as being together. And this really what we stand for, empowering change together. This is our baseline, by the way.
That's a great place to end it, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. It was great talking to you, and I'll send you some chocolate.
Ah, do.